like to now present our last panel, Knowledge Creators Path Forward in the Arctic Arts Summit. We have our moderator here who is joining us from beautiful Iqaluit. If you've ever been there, the people are amazing, the place is amazing, the food is amazing, and I'm very excited to hear these 5 young people speak. This panel is about joining in Knowledge Creators' next program as they reflect on the summit and possible futures of the Arctic Arts Summit. And where do we go from here? And I'd like to pass it over to my new friend from Iqaluit, I hope. Are we friends? Yeah. Okay. I'd like to pass it over to Napatsi.
Thank you. So my name's Napatsi Folger. I'm Inuk from Iqaluit Nunavut, as he said. I'll be moderating today. And just to give you a little bit of a background about what I do, I'm an associate editor for Inuit Art Quarterly and do some other work with the Inuit Futures program out of Concordia. And we have Bronson and Jonas, our Inuit Futures students. And my apologies for looking at my phone because I couldn't print out my notes today. So I'm not texting anybody. I am giving you the information you need to know. So today we have, I'm going to start with Jonas, who's over here on the left, my left. Sorry. Jonas Henderson was born and raised in the Okanagan Valley, British Columbia. However, he traces his roots back to the community of Ahaqoktok in southwestern Greenland. He's entering his final year of civil engineering at McGill University in Quebec, and after he graduates, he plans to pursue a master's degree in architecture and one day establish his own practice. This summer, Jonas is working as an intern at the Canadian Centre for Architecture with the Inuit Futures program. His past experience includes architectural research under Professor Ipik Tuorli at McGill University and studio experience with Michael John Architecture, I probably mispronounced that.
Michael John.
Architecture in his hometown of Penticton, British Columbia. Jonas has also served as the senior co-chair for the McGill chapter of AISES, American Indian Science and Engineering Society, with the chapter winning 3 awards during his time as senior co-chair. And next to Jonas is Emil Kárlsen from Omasvutna in the far north of Norway. He writes music and sings in the indigenous northern Sami language, but with a sound you may not have heard from the Sami homeland before. A modern indie sound colored by both classical strings and whirling sonic universes with touches that may call to mind alternative country or jazz, as if in a dream, weaving in catchy pop melodies and poetic lyrics that explore that dream world. Kárlsen is already an accomplished musician, songwriter, producer, and artist with credits that include 7 years as the frontman for the Tromsø-based indie rock band, Resikulet. You want to correct me on that?
It's good enough.
Okay. My apologies about the pronunciations. I am going to do badly on those. In 2019, he was named Young Artist of the Year at the Rideau Music Festival, which inspired him to dive even deeper into the Sami Yoik tradition that had always been important to him as a young Sami growing up along the Arctic coast. An idea began to form for a Sami language album, which has now come to fruition as Kárlsen's solo record debut, Nagirvarai. Thank you. You know who I am. Bronson. This is Bronson Jacques, who's, sorry, I gotta find his. is an Inuit visual artist who grew up in Postville, Nunatsiavut in Labrador. A student of NASCAD University in Halifax, Bronson is completing his bachelor's degree in fine arts and works as a contributing editor at the Inuit Art Foundation. He's passionate about multidisciplinary arts, delving into many mediums, but specializes in oil painting portraits. Growing up in a family filled with artists of different disciplines who are both traditionally and professionally trained, Bronson has been creating as far back as he can remember. Hoping to return to Nunatsiavut later in life with knowledge and resources to start community programs, Bronson has a drive to give back. We have Norah Lång, comes from the archipelago of the autonomous Åland Islands, located in the Baltic Sea between Finland and Sweden, but is now living in Malmö in southern Sweden. She studies peace and conflict studies at Lund University, is a freelance journalist, as well as one of the editors of the Swedish literary magazine Ord Konst, and is engaged in various other culture and media projects. One of her previous works is the short documentary film that she's going to say out loud for me.
Känn ingen skam för mig i Mariehamn.
Thank you. Which follows the lives of young Ålanders in the small harbor town, Mariehamn. Further, she is engaged in poetry and writes on topics of heritage, nature, and the contemporary generation of the archipelago, among other things. Her heart beats for sustainability and human rights, but also for global political issues in a wide sense. Last but not least, we have Isabelle Chouqette. Isabelle recently graduated from the Museum Studies program at Collège Montmorency in Laval, Quebec. I also don't speak French. Born and raised in Terrebonne, her mother's family is from Igloolik, Nunavut, and her father is French-Canadian. Isabelle currently lives in Montreal, where she works in the Museology department of the Avatak Cultural Institute, taking care of the Nunavik Inuit art collection. Isabelle helped to organize the exhibition of works from Avatak's collection at KWE, Meet with Indigenous Peoples, in 2019. Isabelle's interests include Inuit art and collections, the repatriation of Inuit collections to the north, and continuing to learn about Inuit cultures from the circumpolar north. She hopes to one day move back to Nunavut with her family. So these are our panelists today, and I'm very excited to talk to them about how we want to move forward with future Arctic Arts Summits. I just want to also note that you should keep in mind that the panelists were not able to attend all the panels, as there were so many, as you know, you probably missed several of them too. So when I'm asking them the questions, they'll be answering based on the content that they were able to see, and are not intentionally excluding any panels or workshops with their answers. So my first question is, what was the most relevant content that you observed happening during this summit? And I have no, I don't want to point anybody out, but if anybody has a first go.
I could begin with that. Yeah. I'm Emil. I arrived one day later, so I didn't catch the opening of the festival, but I was here during the whole day yesterday. And most relevant content, I think I have to point out all the performers yesterday, which I was so lucky to hear storytelling out here by the fireplace, and the drum dance with, I don't remember her name. I think she also was from Nunavut. But she had a very beautiful session out here, dancing with her drum and telling us about her traditions, and it was really great. And all the concerts that was in here with Isak and over there on the small stage, and it's Arctic Art Summit, and to see the art here was obviously the most relevant to me as an artist myself as well.
Great. Jonas?
Personally for me, and as Napatsi pointed out, we didn't have the opportunity to go to every panel. But the panel which I enjoyed the most was the one which focused on indigenous languages. And as someone who sadly doesn't speak Greenlandic, which is the language of my ancestors, I have this funny connection to my heritage when I can't speak the language of my ancestors, and hearing people discuss that and the importance of preservation of indigenous languages was most relevant to me.
Bronson?
So it's hard to say which one was most relevant to me because when I accepted the invitation to come here, it was kind of like to rejuvenate my interest in the arts, because over the past 2 years where I'm working from home, studying from home and everything like that, you start to lose a bit of connection to your work. You start to lose a little bit of connection to your community. And that's where I draw my inspiration from with my art. And so when I accepted this, I came here with the intention to make connections again, and every single panel I've been to has been just strengthening connections to me, people I've met virtually, and people I've never met before. And yeah, I went to Queer in the North, I went to a panel about climate change, I went to, yeah, every panel I went to was just reaffirming and validating different things that I've felt, and I wanted to, know I wasn't alone in. So it's very hard to say something that was most relevant to me, because every single thing has been relevant, and if I could have went to everything, I would have.
Oh, and just to clarify, the terminology in my question, I don't mean that anything was irrelevant, but I think in the context of this panel being about what we can focus on for future Arctic Art Summits. So when you give your answers, it really is about what spoke to you the most and what was really strong in your opinion. I agree, all the panels that you were able to see,
There was one that I attended, Queer in the North. My friend Acha and Azimishland spoke on that, and they're people I've known from growing up and people I've met from school, and they spoke on what it means to be queer in the North, what it means to be like non-monogamous and just like in a normative relationship. And I'm in a triad polyamorous relationship, and bringing that back home, it was something that was hard for people to accept at first. So once I heard that there's more people out there who have similar experiences, I could talk to them after the panels and like relate on everything like that. It was very validating and comforting to know. So that's something I want as well, is for more people who are interested in being their authentic self to just feel safe doing that. So that was something that I really liked, and I'm glad that they had that panel.
Thank you.
Can I hook on to that? Because I was actually going to maybe highlight that panel as well. And I kind of, I just noted this sentence that not having to choose between your culture and being queer, or having to choose between your home and being queer. I feel like that definitely hasn't been the case where I come from, really. The thing that you don't maybe have to move somewhere to be able to express your queer identity. And I think that, I'm really taking that with me going home now as well, that we need more platforms on Åland as well to highlight the queer history of the island, the archipelago. And, also we need more platforms to be able to express both our love for the island and for the queer community. So yeah, that was really, really, really interesting and fascinating, I gotta say.
For me, it was connections, like Bronson said, and
Do you mind just holding your
Oh,
mic up a little?
connections to the land also was very present, and it makes me want to connect more to where I come from. So maybe go back and connect to the land and with my people. And I also really appreciated the panel on the status report on decolonizing art institutions, because I work for an Inuit organization, so I kind of felt I didn't really need to do so much work on decolonizing the Inuit organization, but it was really an eye-opener. Like, I need to bring this back to my work and, yeah, take action more.
Great. Shall I move on to the next question, or did you have any more comments about that?
I could just fill in on, because I was supposed to be a part of another panel too, but what I'm hearing from all of you telling about the different panels, I would definitely see these panels continuing into future Arctic Arts Summit. Like the language situation, I also had to learn Sami at school. My parents didn't get to learn Sami, and we had sort of the same distance to the language before I started learning it. So it would be so interesting to hear these panels about language and also the queer situation and connections to the land and everything. The only panel that I actually attended was about politics and art, and it was 5 or 6 ministers from different countries. And for me, as a young artist, it was, well, I don't want to point out anything, but it was kind of boring to listen to 10 minutes of thanking for being here. I gotta be honest for that.
I think that's an important point to make, is that there's a lot of difference between being politicians and organizers and foundations who sort of theorize about art and artists, and then being on the ground and being an artist and doing the work as artists. So there's a disconnect that I've found there, and I think part of this conversation that we're having today is going to be really helpful to try to link those more effectively.
And don't get me wrong, I mean, the politics around the arts are very, very important.
Of course, yeah. I mean, without that, we would just be sitting in our living rooms, poor and hungry. Well, I would. I think this really connects quite well to the next question. So, were there any surprising connections you made between region, like from your own region, be it Sapmi or Nunatsiavut, and content from international or circumpolar panels or events that you attended? Sorry, that was unclear. Did you make any surprising connections when you were attending the panels in a circumpolar context? Like, not from, if you're not from Canada, was there stuff that you saw that really resonated with you that was from different cultures? And, you know, likewise for the Canadians.
Can I start on that one?
Yeah.
I think that's maybe the most beautiful thing about a forum like this, because you kind of realize these things about your own culture and the cultural heritage and the meaning of working with that as well. And you get, I mean, I do a lot of that work myself, solo, and I don't really have anyone kind of, you know, pushing me forward in that. So these types of forums are so amazing, because you realize, you know, how you can present things and traditions in a new way, and like what stuff needs to be brought out into daylight even more, you know. And I was thinking actually yesterday about the hidden storytelling that we have on Åland that no one really bothers to describe, I think. And like the collective memory of the island and everything that has happened. I mean, people have lived on the sea of the sea, you know, out on the islands, and I mean, been abroad on sea. Everything is sea and the ocean and the islands. And that also kind of, I mean, influences our accent, our language, the words we use. We have a lot of our own words that differs from other Swedish dialects, and that is not really preserved at all. Like the heritage that is not material in any way, and though it is very much our culture, and I think I try to do that with my poetry and my writing, but it's a very lonely task in many ways. So this is kind of, yeah, this is the collective that is needed in those ways, yeah.
Jonas?
It might sound a little bit superficial, but I think the main connection I made between regions was, well, to start, when I arrived here and I saw all these people arriving in traditional garments and costumes, I was blown away because I was coming here and I was like, oh yeah, I've got my suit, I'm gonna look great. And I just see everybody else, I mean, what you're wearing here. So that was one surprise connection I saw, was just this passion for self-ornamentation and self-expression through clothing, which I really, really enjoyed seeing.
Bronson?
Something that I didn't quite expect to feel as a connection was the outlook on spirituality. Where I'm from, we're very, well, during colonization we weren't allowed to practice any kind of spirituality that wasn't Christianity, and it's always been something I've had a bit of an issue with, and I've always, like, you know, I'm not sure where we're coming from or anything, but when we were at the opening fire and there was the talk about being like a part of creation and thanking the creator, but not having a specific person that you're praising, it's just the land and the earth. And that's something that I really enjoyed, because when I talk to my family and stuff like that, they don't talk about a certain person. They talk about just being of the land and respecting the land and being, you know, a part of, like, you come from the land. And then hearing that, like, on the other side of Canada and stuff, is like stuff that really resonated with me, trying to figure out where I fit in, where we came from, and just, yeah, hearing those creation stories that aren't like praising a certain person, but is respecting the earth and praising the earth, is something that I felt a good connection on.
Yeah, Phil, the elder Phil who had made the fire, we had a conversation with him afterwards, and he made a great point. He said he doesn't like to hear people say, when I'm out in nature, because everybody is nature. And it really, like, struck me, because Norah and I had talked about, we were talking to him, and he said that to us, and we were both like, yeah, yeah. Emil?
Well, yeah, for me, I'm making connections to people in between all the activities is very valuable for me, just to talk to people I've never talked to before. Like yesterday after I had a concert, there was this woman that came to me. Her name is Nancy, or Niap Saunders. I don't know if she's here today. But she came to me afterwards, and we were talking a bit, and she's a throat singer from Montreal. And for me to meet someone practicing their vocal traditions, especially for me as a vocal artist as well, yeah, it's just, I'm so happy to be in a place where so many different people come together and present their cultures, and yeah, the meetings in between, you know, the meetings that are not set up, those are often the best. But also gatherings around the fire, listening to stories together, that's something that you don't experience a lot these days. I mean, storytelling is something that I hope we can bring back more into the daily lives of us, because it's really, it can give us a lot of new perspectives, new experiences, new feelings inside of us, and you know, sitting together around there and laughing of the same things and clapping and just enjoying things together, that's been very valuable to me. And also meeting friends and colleagues from my homeland, the Sami homeland, and yeah, new friends from the Sami homeland, where I'm from, and new friends from all over the world. It can't be said enough, but it's so valuable for everybody, especially after 2 special years. And old friends that suddenly appeared, so yeah, so much.
Isabelle?
Pretty much like everybody said, but I saw that storytelling was something that was strong in a lot of our culture, so yeah.
Yeah, I really liked the sort of continuity between cultures and communities across the North. I think a lot of us probably work kind of siloed sometimes. Like, I know Bronson and I work together at the Inuit Art Foundation, and it's absolutely necessary, and it's a wonderful organization. But while we're doing that work, we don't often get to see, you know, work from First Nations across Canada, and especially work from Yukon. So being here, attending Tether, and meeting all these artists from all over the the North, circumpolar North, has been fantastic to make connections, but also see that kind of continuity in all of our varying and different communities. It's been great. Okay, so I have one more question, and then I think we can have a little bit more of an open conversation after that. I mean, it's been pretty open. So I want to preface this question with the fact that we're not here to criticize anything that's happened at this summit. It's been fantastic, but just wanted to say that because it's about, you know, what we could do for the future summits. So for future summits, what topics would you like to see discussed?
Well, I can begin. I think that the topics that have been discussed here probably will be relevant for quite a long time. In some cases, it's unfortunate that the topics are relevant for a long time, but like, for example, how we all over the world have to, well, fight against mining and protect our lands and all that. I think we probably have to gather around these questions next year too, but hopefully we would have moved forward until then. Other than that, it's hard for me to come up with any new topics that I would like to see discussed. I mean, the program this year was really great, but the only thing that I felt is that maybe structure-wise it could be portioned out a bit, that we had some concerts earlier on the day and some panel talks a little later, like that we have a bit of everything throughout the day and not just talking and then just concerts and performances like we had yesterday, because it can be heavy in the long run with so many different performances after another. So it would be nice to attend some talks and sit down between the concerts, for example. That's a wish that I have, at least.
Yeah, to at least decompress after a panel and maybe enjoy some music or performances.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Norah?
Yeah, I can go ahead. Yeah, I definitely feel like I unfortunately missed a lot of stuff that I would have loved to go see when it comes to panels. But I guess I was thinking of one thing, because I went to the panel today about curating arts and art from the North, basically, and curating the North. And I feel a need to maybe not myself, but there is a need to curate my own culture from Åland in a more diverse way, I would say, because we have a tendency to follow very strict and very clear narratives that have been reproduced a lot as well. So I think that would be something to maybe, maybe do something about, or like to have a forum for at the next summit, like how to start maybe collecting and gathering the non-material cultural heritage of a place that really hasn't had that, had those platforms before, I guess.
So like just expanding a little more on curatorial practices for cultural.
Yeah, I think so. And maybe also like how to actually start from the beginning in some ways, and like how to be, I guess, how to form that collective that you definitely need to start that process of like trying to maybe also kind of reboot like how you portray a place.
For me, it wasn't like really more subjects, but maybe I would have loved to see more elders. I know it can be difficult with travel and everything, but I think that would have been nice to hear more about their perspective also.
Great point. Bronson, I think you had a point when we talked the other day.
When it comes to things that I want to see, there was one thing we had a quick chat about, like maybe having like a description in the title, like because there were so many interesting panels that I wanted to attend, but getting the title of what it was, sometimes you go there and the conversation would steer in a completely different direction, it was always a good conversation, but when you try to cater your schedule around certain topics, it might be interesting to just have a little blurb underneath that's just like describe what it's going to be about. But like I said, everything was really interesting, so even if the topics went off a little bit, it was very good. Something that I might suggest for future summits, I'm not sure if I've missed it, if it was there or not, but is how to get artists up to speed on how to talk about their ideas and proposals and how to like apply for grants and stuff, because there's so many artists from back home that don't know how to communicate their ideas, and so they have all these really amazing ideas and no resources to make them a reality and materialize them. And when I was 18, I moved out of my hometown, and that's when I started to learn how to talk to people, like professionally. Before that, I had no way that I could barely talk at all. And so over the last 9 years, I've been slowly developing my ability to talk to people and explain my ideas. And it's not something that you have at the get-go when you're growing up back home. You're very modest about everything. You don't want to take up people's time by explaining what you want to do. And I feel like people don't understand that we don't have that base level of just being able to talk about things and just having something to be able to promote more ideas that people are having trouble expressing would be good.
Yeah, and that would be a great opportunity for when we were talking a little bit about the disconnect between like the political aspect of art and the artwork itself. That would be a great opportunity to link those two and have conversations with people who are involved on the more technical side of art, curating and creating, and have connections with the actual artists so that they're even more capable of presenting their work to the world. Did you have thoughts, Jonas?
What was the question again?
Oh, sorry. So for future summits, what topics would you like to see discussed, or changes to the format of the summit?
I'm sorry I missed the question.
No, it's okay.
I was nervous about going on stage, and when I get nervous, I drink a lot of water. So sorry about that. Well, as Napatsi mentioned earlier, I'm a civil engineering student with a strong interest in architecture and want to further my education through architecture. So I would have liked to have seen at least some panels or presentations touching on architecture a little bit, because I personally, I think it might just because it's my interest, but I see architecture as a very underrated art because it's all around us. It's like, it's the biggest art that affects us every day. It affects how we live, it affects how we interact with people, it impacts whether you need to have a car or whether you can walk to the store. So yeah, so it's a very important art. So it would have been very cool to see some discussions around architecture and city planning.
Any more comments about?
I've got one. Is it
Oh,
okay?
of course, we got lots of time. Yeah.
Super. No, I just realized, so I was moderating a panel on climate yesterday, yeah, with regard to, international collaboration and art and cultural leadership and youth involvement and all of that stuff. And I think those big themes could maybe also be, because they are so, we realized that yesterday, I think that it was, I had like 10 more questions to to ask the participants of the panel. I think that's also something that maybe could even be spread out more into the other panels as well, because it's something that definitely has an impact on art, it has an impact on, living conditions, it has an impact on politics, and yeah, those perspectives could be just maybe even influence other panels and other programming, I guess. Yeah, just a quick thought that I thought about now.
Excellent. Does anybody else have any more comments sort of related to?
Yeah, architecture is, there's a lot of traditional knowledge also through the architecture, which would be cool to get an insight in different cultures, architectural art. That would be great too. And also I enjoy that the panel talks have had different formats. Like we have here the traditional talk show kind of setup, and out in the Lavu, it was more of a conversational setup, serving coffee, and it's really intimate. So it's a low. It's easy for the participants to actually participate in the conversation, and I really enjoy that we had the different formats there to discuss topics in different ways.
I have like a
Bronson, go on.
I have just a very quick comment about infrastructure in the north. Jonas and I attended a talk prior to the summit, and it was talking about how in northern communities and stuff like that, the decisions on what the houses are like and who gets the houses are made by people who are nowhere near it, and the decisions around housing and how the housing is made and distributed needs to be made in a more local sense, because sometimes when someone from away hears about indigenous architecture and how they want to have their homes built, just think you want to have like wooden igloos in the community, and it's like, no, we don't want dome-shaped houses just because we had igloos when we were traveling around, where we now don't live that way, and we're in these communities and we don't move around as much, but there's so many things that is overlooked by people who are nowhere in the area. So getting more decision on your infrastructure from the people who actually live there would be, very important.
Great point. So that's the end of my questions, but we do have time, and we can open up the discussion if you had other thoughts about any content that I didn't bring up in my questions, or if anyone has any further comments to make.
Yeah, well, I was going to say something to you just before you took off, but But you said something about coming here with the different clothing and stuff, and something that I felt was that because yeah, obviously I also thought, okay, I had to bring my most beautiful clothing, which I like to present myself in. But coming here and seeing everyone just being totally themselves, it seems like. And yeah, your suit is beautiful too. So I mean, we're all just coming here as we are, and it's room for that. It hasn't been no pressure that I've felt, at least, when I've really appreciated that, the vibe that we have meeting each other, and yeah, people being curious about each other without being intimidating in any way. So I really enjoyed that part of just being here.
Yeah, and I think that ties really well into something that we discussed as a group, the Inuit Futures group recently, was about how people often look at Indigenous people. I mean, we were talking specifically about Inuit, but seeing us as people stuck in the past, a static culture, and so that people talk about if you're Inuk and you wear traditional clothes, you can't also, wear Converse shoes, or you can't be a modern Inuk and a traditional Inuk. But I think that point is great because, you're wearing beautiful Sami clothing and you're wearing a modern, very sharp suit, but you're both Indigenous. It doesn't change the fact that you are both Indigenous, and that we're all modern people and we also follow certain traditions of our cultures. So I think that's great, and it was a really, I don't know, it just felt good to have that conversation with other people and not internalize it.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it, but they said Indigenous people have always been contemporary and they always wanted to innovate and modernize, and just because there's new things to come along, it doesn't mean we have to keep using the same things. Like I know some friends who are in art school and they'll be asked by like professors and stuff, how come you didn't do this in your traditional methods? Like how come you didn't like make, what would it be, like a stone cut print and stuff? But like we have new tools and we're able to use them. Like we're always wanting to innovate. We're not just using things because it's historical, and like of course we respect tradition and everything like that, but we shouldn't be expected to just be static, like you said.
Yeah, and the same goes for like the content of our art. It doesn't have to be, I don't have to draw, traditional women's comb. I can draw my friend drinking a coffee if I want to. He can be a white guy too. We're trying to take back our own sort of, I can't think of the word right now, but be able to produce whatever content we want, and it's still Inuit art, even if it doesn't have a polar bear in it, So that's all my questions. Did anybody else want to have any comments before I make my closing remarks?
I was very inspired, and thank you.
Yeah, very happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. It's revitalized my interest in the arts, and I'm so excited to go home and make things. I haven't made anything for myself in about 2 years, and so I'm going to go back and have all this inspiration and ideas for making art, and yeah, things like this are very important for growing and keeping the arts alive. So thank you for having me.
Of course, I also want to thank for being here, and next time I hope to get more of the program and stay here for much longer than I do now.
Thank you from me as well. I told some people that I really haven't been a part of the Arctic community at all before. So this has been very eye-opening for me in many, many ways. So thank you to all of you.
I guess as everybody else said, thank you so much. It was an honor to be here. And I felt very privileged to get to meet so many different people from different regions with different perspectives and life experiences. It was very very enlightening. So thank you.
Yeah, and to continue the wave of thank yous, I just want to say a few more. Thank all of the organizers for this huge undertaking. You know, both the big organizations that were part of it, but also all of the support staff who worked really, really hard to get everyone, all the delegates organized and getting us together and booking our hotels, and the hotel staff for putting up with being completely fully booked to have all of these people come to the beautiful city of Whitehorse. And I'd also really like to thank just all of the delegates who have come and taken time, and many of you have traveled for 30 hours from different parts of the world to be here. It's been such a wonderful experience, and it's so eye-opening to be able to spend time with people from all over the world who have all these connections that we don't necessarily know about. We're ending a little bit early, but you can have that time. And you're welcome.